All right, let's kick off the first panoramic workshop Twitch stream. So this is a new thing for me. Probably going to screw this up, but we're going to see how we go. I'm going to give the Twitch stream a go to start with, and if this doesn't work, we'll probably switch to a YouTube live feed. But the whole idea behind this was to get people on the stream live and just discuss things as we go. Which I thought might have been a better way to do it since no one's doing Photoshop stuff on Twitch. So anyway, let's give it a crack. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a quick and easy edit on a waterfall image from New Zealand. I'm going to go through the Lightroom import process, a couple of quick adjustments. We're going to export it to Photoshop, and then we will do some finishing touches there, and then we'll get it ready for Instagram, and then we'll have it ready for print as well. So just before we kick off, I just want to touch on the fact that Lightroom and Photoshop are pretty much industry standard for anything you want to do with photography. So I know there's a lot of guys in the Facebook group who don't have these tools, but I can honestly say that you're going to have to invest in this stuff, in my opinion, if you want to start moving your photography forward. And it's all good and well to just get a nice image in camera, but if you really want to start pushing out and getting creative, then this is the way to do it. Also, I want to touch on the fact that what I'm teaching you here is just the way I do things. With Photoshop and Lightroom, there is more than one way to skin a cat. My intention is not to make copycats of how I do it, but just to start showing you the tools and the general process that I go through to get an image out the door. We'll try and keep this quick to about 10 minutes. That gives me about 7 minutes left, so I'll get cracking and we'll get into it. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is import our images. So I've got Lightroom open. This is just showing some old images at the moment. We've got our library open up here, and you'll see a few tabs across the top. We're going to be using these first two today. So I'm going to click the import tab. We're going to go to our waterfall image that we're going to work with today, and here's a bunch of them. I'm going to just import them all. They're already pre-checked. I'm going to click this button. Everything's imported now into our Lightroom catalog. So you'll see a film strip down the bottom. By selecting these, we can filter them for the best shot, and then we can choose to work on that. If you want to look at a particular image, just double click on it. And what Lightroom will do is it'll create a sharper, smoother version. So clearly this one is a shit shot. Very blurry, no good. This is a better shot. Now, when this shot was taken, it was a rainy day, and we were battling all the elements. You can see a lot of shit in this shot. There's stuff up here. There's water droplets already on the lens. And in general, it's not a bad shot, but we've got heaps to pick from, and we could do better. So looking straight ahead over here, this is a better angle. You can see all this stuff over here, no good. This is instant scrap for me. No point working on that. You can see water droplets again there, no good. Also no good, clearly. Now this is the one I think we're going to be working with and looking at different versions of that shot. You can see I've bracketed the exposures here. So you can see this misty haze over here that I don't like this. This is no good. So that's out of the picture for me. So this I'm pretty happy with. So what I'm going to do now is bring it into the Develop tab. And from here, I'm going to make sure that our lens corrections are set and it's picked up the correct model of lens that we were using. If I didn't have this on, you'll see what happens is that there's definite barrel distortion there off the lens, so we will apply that. You won't see much of this chromatic aberration, so we'll leave that. That's our first job done, 2 easy clicks. And what we're going to do now is we're going to just make global adjustments, making sure that everything is okay. Horizon's pretty level, that's pretty good. We'll look at our histogram, make sure there's nothing clipped into the shadows, so it's not pure black. And we haven't got any really pure whites up here to worry about highlight. Now, some of you guys will notice that highlights are already pulled back. This is something that I do automatically on import, but if it wasn't, that's where yours would be at 0. And you'll see that this is all fairly bright now. And even though there's no clipping, the highlights, I still think we're getting a better, less washed out result down towards this end. So the other thing I'm going to do is just try and keep the mood of this shot. So there's no point trying to make this, a beautiful yellow sunset day with, nice colors and everything. It was a gloomy day. So we're going to focus on that and just work with what the image is giving us. So I'm just going to pull our exposure back a little bit because I like what's happening here. And in general, these rocks are nice. We've got a bit of a leading line pointing towards a waterfall. Waterfall's on the right. It's not quite on a third line, but that's okay too. So the next thing we're going to have a look at is just working down our panel here. I'm not going to be worried too much about these at this stage, and I'm not going to screw around with these whites and blacks. I'm happy with the contrast. What I do want to do is get rid of sharpening. I'm going to do all of that in post-process in Photoshop. And what I'm going to have a look at next is just the general color. So I'm going to be working with the HSL sliders now. So you'll see that each of these has a hue, saturation, and luminance. And what I want to do here is just make sure that we pronounce the nice areas in the image. So we've got some nice blues and aquas here. I'd like to pronounce that, especially down here in this foreground water. Some of the trees here are a little bit bright, a little bit green, and so that might distract it a little bit. Also with yellows. So let's have a look. Here's our hue, here's our luminance. I'm going to bring the greens back, and you'll see the result that's having straight away right there in this zone here. So I'm pretty happy with it around there. Saturation wise, I just want to push up these yellows and oranges a little bit because that's a nice feature of this New Zealand landscape. Not too much. If you wanted to target these specifically, you click this little button here, and then you can just grab that area there, and you'll see that all I'm working with there is that specific color range. And it's a great little way to target an area in the image and just bring that up. So with that, I'm pretty happy, and I'm going to keep it at that. We've already turned the sharpening off, and that's all we're going to do here. So right now, I'm going to export this to Photoshop, and we'll be good to go. Now, I've got the export settings for Lightroom automatically set to high resolution sRGB image, and we're going to stick with that. Now it's already 10 minutes and I'm running bloody late, so we'll maybe go for 20 minutes on the first one. So edit, Adobe Photoshop, let's go. Okay, Now we're in Photoshop. If you're using a stock standard Photoshop, your layout might not look like this. You probably won't have these panels here. And your toolbar will probably be on the left hand side, but I like all my stuff over here on the right. It's a nice workflow, everything's together, it's less moving the mouse backwards and forwards, so it's a much more efficient workflow. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a copy of this layer, and in Photoshop we're going to use layers, and we're just going to stack them up. If I click and drag that on that little plus, it'll create a background copy. Now anything I do to this copy will be independent of the bottom copy. And if I do something here I don't like, I can get rid of it or work backwards. I'm just going to turn my history tab on so you guys can see what's going on. Alright, so the workflow that you're going to have in Photoshop is working from the top down. And when I say top, I mean globally. So again, we're going to make some broad adjustments, and then we're going to start fine-tuning a few things. So first of all I want is an adjustment layer. So I'm going to click this middle button down here. I'm going to click on curves. Curves are probably in my opinion, the most used tool in Photoshop. They're fantastic. And what this will do is show you a picture of the histogram, which means that you can then start adjusting your curve. And you'll notice that I've just clicked a dot in there. I can do the same up the top, and what that does is put a pin in there so that we're not affecting anything in the high areas. So if I just want to bring down in general and make this a slightly darker shot, that's what I'm going to do. And that's our first layer. In our second layer, I'm going to start getting to work with the rest of the image, and I'm going to start painting dark and I'm going to paint light so that we get this nice centralized area of interest. Again, we're going to be using this line here to point at the waterfall. So same again, I'm going to create a curves layer. What I'm going to do now is just darken things down yet again. And now I'm going to click on this mask here, this little white mask. White mask means that whatever you've done is absolutely visible. If I invert that, Control I, you'll see it turns black. That means you can't see any of it. So with a brush, it's B. Using my square brackets on the keyboard, I can make my brush bigger and smaller. I'm going to start painting that effect that we just created. Up here you'll see opacity and flow sliders. Just imagine your brush is like an airbrush. The opacity is how thinned out your paint might be, and the flow is how quickly that paint might come out. So working around the edges of the image, I'm going to change my brush to white. So I'm painting against a black background, and you'll see that I'll start darkening the edges up. And if you have a look at the mask, you'll see that effect being applied. And so we're going to do the same again. Let's say I'm happy with that. We're going to do the same again with the light level. So I'm going to do another curves adjustment layer. This time I'm going to be working with the bright areas to bring the brightness up. It's a little too strong. It might be better there. Okay. Invert our mask. B for brush. It's white. We're going to use the same settings. Reduce the brush size. I'm just going to paint some of these white areas in here, these light areas. Let's have a look at that. So we've brought the trees up a little bit, brought the waterfall up a little bit, and the image is starting to come along real nice. The last thing I'm going to do is just darken off the edges a little bit without using your typical vignette. And we do that by putting a solid color in. I'm going to use pure black. Going to invert our mask again. Nice big brush. It's set to white. Opacity is fine. So you see what's happening up here. I'm just going to start creating shadow. Maybe just drop that back a little bit. Now what we're creating now is a little bit of depth in our image. So this has really come forward. That's gone back. I'm happy with the color. These cyans and these little aquas here, we forgot to do that in Lightroom, but we can do that later. But for now, this is looking good. So now we're getting close to finishing this off. If we press Control-Shift-E, that will blend everything that we've done into one top layer. So all of these ones, we can press Control and Shift, select everything, put it into a group of its own, and we can have a look at our before and after. Looking pretty good. So the last thing I will do now is just finesse the image a little bit, have a look for anything that's distracting. And so in this case, I'm seeing a couple of spots around that really take my eye away. That rock, some of these things over here, these spots, and they're usually just fixed with our little tool up here, this little spot healing brush. All we do is select that. We can take away those things that we don't feel fit. And you'll notice that I'm working on this top layer now. That is our fixed layer that we're doing these minute adjustments to. Let's say that we're happy with that. Our last step is going to be to just sharpen this image up, resize it, and have it ready to go. So I'm going to merge everything up to a top layer, and I'm going to do something called a high pass filter, which is a great way to sharpen an image. So all we do is work on a new layer, we'll go to filter, other, high pass, and what we're looking for is just a little bit of detail, pardon me, in the rock and in the leaves. So you can see zoomed in here, 1.3, that's fine. I'm going to change the blend mode of that by clicking up here, and we're going to change that to vivid light. And you should see the difference with that straight away. You'll see it's slightly blurry and that's instantly sharper. I mean, just have a look in that foliage there. It's really brought it out. And looking down here at this rock, much more textured. And so the last thing we want to do is make sure that we're applying that sharpening only where we want it. We can put another mask in, invert it, or keep it that way. If we keep it white this time and we set it to black, we're doing the opposite of what we did before. So the sharpening is fully applied now. If I start painting with black, let's make it a little bit stronger. I'm going to take the sharpening off the water. The water should not be sharp. So it's all flowing nicely. There should be no sharp edges on any of the water. And I'm being very quick and rough here, but you get the idea. And so all we've done there is take the sharpening bits off the areas that we don't want it. And that's it. That is our image complete. To finish it off, all we do now is resize it. We'll save our waterfall shot into a separate folder. I've made this process folder. Save our document as a PSD master document. And you'll see it saving down here. As soon as it's saved, we're going to save it as a JPEG, as a full res JPEG, and that is your image ready for print at any lab. And as soon as that is saved, we're going to save a smaller version for export to Instagram. Here we go. So now we're just going to save a JPEG. And we're going to make sure our sRGB color mode is selected. We're going to click Save, maximum quality. That's done. And now we're going to resize. For Instagram, I usually go with 2048, which is the maximum Instagram and Facebook can take. But it's a good ratio because it'll be downsampled for Instagram in any case, but it'll be good for Facebook. It'll still look good. There's our Instagram ready image. File, save as. We're going to change it to JPEG. I'm going to relabel this one IG for Instagram. There we go. A little bit longer than we should have gone for, but that is essentially our first little tutorial, just introducing you guys to layers, curves, and masking, and a little bit of Lightroom processing. Hope you enjoyed it, and stick around. We will be back with another stream down the track. Thanks for coming. Bye.